Your dash lights flicker for no reason. Three warning lights pop on at once. Your radio cuts out over a bump, then comes right back. Every one of those symptoms points you toward an expensive part, a bad alternator, a failing sensor, or even a dying control module. But here's what nobody tells you. Most of the time, it's a $5 fix hiding in plain sight, completely free to check yourself. And here's the part that should genuinely annoy you. Shops replace alternators, sensors, and even entire control modules on trucks where the real problem was a dirty connection the whole time. A bad ground looks exactly like a dozen other failures on a scan tool. It fools plenty of experienced techs, not just part-swapping guessers working off a hunch and a code reader. Nobody's necessarily lying to you either. The symptoms genuinely mimic real component failure, right down to the specific codes it throws at the exact same diagnostic port every single time. You could be one wire brush away from fixing this for free. Or you could be about to pay for a part that was never actually broken to begin with, sitting perfectly healthy under the hood. Let's get into it. Let's clear up what you're actually chasing first before you spend a dime on anything. Every electrical system in your Ford needs two paths to work: power going out and a return path back to the battery through the chassis. That return path is called a ground. It runs through thick cables and metal straps bolted between your engine, your body, and your frame, all working as one invisible network you never think about until it fails. When one of those connections corrodes, even a little, it doesn't cut the circuit completely. It just adds resistance quietly without announcing itself anywhere on the dash. Nothing warns you, and that's exactly why the symptoms feel so random and disconnected from each other. Here's the part that makes this so easy to misdiagnose. A little resistance in the ground doesn't kill one system outright. It half-starves several systems at once quietly, in ways that don't obviously connect to each other on the surface. Your alternator has to work harder to push current through a weaker path than it should ever have to deal with. That strain alone can make it look like it's failing, even when it's perfectly healthy underneath the housing. And that's exactly why a healthy alternator sometimes gets replaced for nothing when the fault was never inside it at all. Your sensors send slightly corrupted signals too. Their reference voltage isn't stable anymore, drifting just enough to matter but not enough to trip an obvious fault. That throws codes that look exactly like sensor failure on a scan tool, pointing a tech straight at the wrong part every single time it happens. Multiple modules lose clean communication with each other at the same time, because they're all sharing that same weak return path back to the battery. That's why three unrelated warning lights showing up together is actually a classic sign of a ground problem, not three separate failures happening on the same day by coincidence. One quick, honest filter before we get into it. If a component is actually dead, physically burnt out, or a wire's been chewed through by a rodent, no amount of cleaning a ground strap brings that back to life. This fixes a weak connection, nothing more than that. But a sharp chemical smell or genuinely dead accessories are a different story. That's a real repair, not this one. If what you're dealing with sounds like flickering, intermittent, or multiple unrelated lights at once keep going, this is exactly your fix. Let's actually do it. Step 1. Disconnect your battery's negative terminal first. Always negative first, never positive. Set the cable well aside so it can't touch anything metal while you work underneath the hood. This isn't optional for safety, it's the first thing any tech does before touching grounds, and skipping it risks a short the moment a tool brushes the wrong surface. Step 2. Find your main ground points. Start at the battery negative cable where it bolts to the chassis. Then find the engine to body strap, usually a thick braided cable running from the engine block to the firewall or fender. Easy to spot once you know what you're looking for. Then check for additional body-to-frame straps, often near the doors or underneath near the cab mounts, sometimes tucked out of easy sight behind a plastic shield. Your owner's manual or a quick search for your specific model shows you exactly where Ford put each one on your particular truck, since routing varies a bit by year and trim. Step 3. Disconnect each ground point one at a time and look closely at the metal underneath. You're looking for a dull gray or greenish crust instead of clean, bright metal. That crust is the actual problem. It's been sitting right there the whole time you were chasing a sensor code or scheduling a repair you might not have needed at all. Sometimes it's obvious the moment you look. Other times it's hiding right under the bolt head where you'd never think to check unless you actually loosened it first. Step 4. Clean both sides of every connection down to bare, shiny metal. A wire brush or fine sandpaper works fine. Nothing specialized needed from a parts store and nothing that costs you a dime beyond what's already in your garage. Once it's clean, apply a thin layer of dielectric grease before you reconnect. That seals out moisture and slows the corrosion from coming right back next season, especially through another winter of road salt working into every gap it can reach. Step 5. Reconnect everything. Tighten it down properly with a wrench, and reconnect your battery. Positive first this time, negative last. Turn on every electrical system you can reach: headlights, radio, wipers, blower motor, and watch closely for the flicker or the light that started all this in the first place. Now let's be honest about what this actually fixes, so you know if it worked for the right reason. Flickering headlights or dash lights, warning lights that come and go without a consistent pattern, sometimes for days at a time before settling. A slow or uneven crank with a battery that tests perfectly fine on its own, confirmed at a parts store. Multiple unrelated codes appearing together on the same scan, spanning completely different systems that have nothing to do with each other on paper. All of those are classic ground symptoms, not classic sensor or alternator symptoms, even though they get treated that way constantly by well-meaning techs working off the codes alone. Ford F-150s specifically have several ground points with genuinely complex routing throughout the truck, which means there's more than one spot for corrosion to quietly take hold, especially if you're in a salt state where road salt reaches everything it can find. Certain systems on your Ford are especially sensitive to this, worth knowing for next time. Trailer brake controllers and remote start modules both rely on a clean, stable ground to communicate properly. They're often the first things to act up, flickering out or refusing to respond reliably before anything else on the truck shows a symptom at all. Aftermarket stereo systems are notorious for this too. Installers sometimes ground them to a convenient bolt instead of a proper chassis point, creating a brand new weak connection that didn't exist before the install happened. And here's when you should actually go check this again down the road, not just wait for symptoms to show up on their own. After a jump start, since jump starting pushes a rough surge of current straight through those same connections all at once. After any underbody work, a mechanic bumping a strap loose without even realizing it happens more than you'd think. After driving through standing water deep enough to reach the frame, and on any truck past 8 or 10 years old, since that's roughly when salt and vibration have had enough time to actually do damage to a connection that was fine when it left the factory brand new. Here's a habit that keeps this from ever becoming a mystery again. Check your main grounds once a year, ideally right before winter if you're anywhere that sees road salt, the same way you'd check your battery terminals during a routine oil change. It takes 5 minutes with the truck already up on ramps or a lift for something else. Owners who make this part of their yearly routine almost never end up chasing a mystery electrical gremlin, because they catch it before it ever becomes one in the first place. One quick reality check before we wrap up, and this covers everything you need to verify before calling it done. If you want real proof instead of just watching for symptoms, a cheap multimeter confirms a bad ground before you clean anything at all. Set it to DC volts, touch one probe to the battery's negative post and the other to bare metal on the block. Then have someone crank the engine while you watch the number climb or hold steady. Anything over half a volt during cranking means real resistance somewhere in that path. Give it one full drive cycle before calling it fixed for good, watching for the exact symptom that sent you looking for this in the first place. It should be gone immediately, not fading in gradually. Still there after cleaning every ground you can find? That's a real component this time, not a connection. And no more scrubbing changes that outcome. If this saved you from an unnecessary repair, do me a favor and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me which warning light finally made sense once you watch this.